Hello and welcome back to the channel and another one of our CC design contest playthroughs. And this one's Old Barren Burn from Meika94, who I am not familiar with at all. So we can go black tees and it is, let's go pin 2. Now I believe he'd said high winds, otherwise default green speeds, bonuses and things. So yeah. Looking at this one, you've got the red flowers, which is kind of reminiscent of Old Sandwich. I'm assuming that's going to be the inspiration, which is a really cool look. I've had that as an idea for a little while. I've got an idea of how I would accomplish this. So interested to see if you've gone the same sort of way. What else he said? No water hazards or OB. One drivable par 4, 13, and a par 3 shorter than 125 yards, which is 14. So 2 short holes back to back. Right, leap into camera mode and just a little browse around. And the other thing is the limited elevation change. Okay. So yeah, gentle rolling hills, some sandy waste sort of areas. You can see the grass kind of popping in. And then you've got the red heather as well, which on Old Sandwich is kind of everywhere. It's gone for a ravine sort of thing here, which is interesting. That's a little bit different. Oh, I like the kind of openness and the autumn look. The lighting, I think, is also kind of a enforced choice to make that red heather look less glaring. So I think you've probably nailed that best you can. It's a shame you can't get it so that you get the red at this sort of colour and the grass is popping, but what can you do? Otherwise, autumn look. Yeah, I mean, pretty simple in that it's kind of all about the golf, which we're good with. As for the elevation change, I suspect if we went from high point on the hill you've got here, I mean that alone is 32 feet, I'd have thought. So I'm not sure you're necessarily hitting that in that sense, but I guess Q did say tee to green. So highest green to lowest tee or vice versa. This doesn't immediately strike me as a 32 feet elevation course, I have to be honest. But nevertheless, we're just going to give it a play and see how we go. Right. First hole. And okay, so you've got these bunkers on the corner with grass kind of going into them. This feels like it could have all been done a little bit neater, like the grass going into the bunkers. Like either they're all kind of bearded or they're not, and then the back one just feels like that's where the multi-plant happens to have gone in. The grass itself, I'd have probably, even though you're going kind of a autumnal look, you want some different colours in here. This all just looks very dead me, and then it means that the red really pops compared to like blending in a little bit more. Same with the orange over here. I think your planting can just blend better. Like you can see these are all at the same height, and the orange is only, or the brown is only just there, and then you've got these green pines growing out of it. Like we can tie this all together a little bit more. Kind of tucked pin, like for a 450-yard hole, you're pinching driver quite a lot. I would say we don't really have a lot of scope to go left or over these bunkers, certainly in this wind. And then a bunker this side would probably give a lot more fairway width out here so that people can bail out here, but then you've also cut off the front of the green with that bunker, so we're going to have to go aerial, which in this wind might not be easy. At least we've hit A tempo. So I'm interested to see what length of approach I've got here. So, okay, A-tine, there's a hint of a backstop, but it's kind of, you hit this shot, I guess you can bail out here, but then we've also put it on a tiny little slope here. I think all of this works if you make the bunker, like for CC, again, CC difficulty is a big part of this contest. If this bunker's not cutting off this part of the green, well, then we can bail out to about here and we get a relatively easy part. As it is, it's kind of, you can never get this angle around here, so you can never get around it. I think you need to move that bunker probably about 10 yards this way so that like that's the edge of the bunker. If you want to go dead at the pin, you're taking it on. If you want to bail out a little bit, you're not. I do love the colour contrast with the reds. I think with the reds, it's difficult with trees because they're obviously going to be big objects. And I think there's a plant that you could have done it with and you might have gotten better results. That's kind of the one I was considering. Coleus, maybe? Okay, interested to see if this bounces. Yeah, pretty close down. Yeah, and then the other thing with the blending of planting is you've got this giant grass. Like, the closer you are to the playable surfaces, you want that to be smaller, so that if you're just offline, and you can kind of see you've done it over here. You've got tiny grass, but then immediately gone to giant grass. So, like, you want to blend this so that you go tiny, slightly bigger, slightly bigger, slightly bigger, and then the giant stuff is in the background. It's more work, but that's kind of what you have to do in contests, and it makes a big difference. Obviously missed this in the wrong place, so I'm not expecting to be able to get up and down for par necessarily. I absolutely hammered that. Got the line right at least. Opening bogey, which feels like about what I deserved for that approach shot. Okay, hole 2. Again, really narrow. Really narrow. And inching, this is now 2 holes where you've gone bunkers on both sides of the landing zone. Typically, again, CC, I'd avoid that. Give people the chance to play away from hazards, but a better line in if they go here. Because you, like, if they're playing out here, they're hitting over this big bunker to a green that's probably sloping away. That's the punishment. You don't need the bunker here as well. Because it also, the more bunkers you put on, just makes the choice off the tee more arbitrary. It doesn't, it's just, oh, well, I have to aim middle rather than having to really think about it. I like the green site. I think you could do a little bit more with your sculpting here. It just kind of, it does dip, but like we can detail this a little bit more to make it look better. Same with your planting around the bunkers as with the first hole. The grass is just kind of there. We could tie it in a little bit more. Downwind. I like the green though, in that I can kind of try to use those slopes to my advantage and run it down a little bit. Again, that back pin can be pretty tough if you can't cover those bunkers. I'm not sure, again, you can get to those angles. And I've mentioned this with a couple of other courses. But if you're hitting to a top tier, you can't have that tier running away as well. That's really punitive because if people are a little bit short, they're down there. If they're a little bit long, they're down there. And you just kind of go back. You've got that. It's probably not happening, but if you look at this point, everything is breaking away from here. Basically, it's going this way, this way, this way, this way. You want to make it so that at least there's some consistency of slopes. See if we can redeem ourselves from the first hole. Nope, that's going to miss. Low. The rocks work nicely. I think, again, I'd just say detail planting is a little bit lacking for me. The planting is all there, and it's surrounding the hole and creating an environment. I like the view looking down and the sculpting and the hills on the left and the hills on the right. Like, there's interesting, like, the way the fairway comes out of these hills is really cool. I just want some stuff to grab my attention a bit more here rather than it looking a bit monotone. Again, here's kind of empty as well. I think that's going to be a big part of this. Again, also like the waste bunkers, you could make them really pop and tie in, but it's the same kind of patches of grass. Like, we get some bushes in, and that sort of stuff does really take time, but makes a huge difference. Rather than here, we've just got the one bush that's been kind of put down and a few bits of red. Like, I think invest 2 bushes. But again, you've got a super green one and then some brown of the same type. Like, doesn't totally make sense. I just think investing more time in your planting would make a big difference. Again, 3rd tee shot in a row where I'd say difficulty-wise it's just too pinched for CC, really. I appreciate that this one we can lay up a bit more, or the driver gives an option of going for it. So there's more of an incentive to lay up on this hole. We'll talk about the green when we get there. And I think I probably will, just for variety's sake. Okay, so we lay up and we can still get there, which is a good way to incentivize the layup, like shorter club, but yeah, we want a bit more control coming into this green because there's a frontier, so you want to be able to really land it on the green and stop it, so that does incentivize driver. This bit of fairway, I'm not really sure why it exists. I'm all for fairway around the greens, don't get me wrong, like 100% for it, but why are we ending up here? Because if we're going, I guess it provides a bit of a bailout right, but you've got the mound in front which cuts it off. Like, I think either give a load of fairway all the way here or just don't bother. I can see why we don't have fairway here. This bunker feels maybe a little disconnected from the green. And again, like, I try to wrap your fairway around the bunkers a little bit more. Like, if you could trace a fairway line around about here, to be honest, probably lose this bunker entirely, I think. But yeah, what's the purpose of this fairway? Because it's not running balls onto the green. It's not really running balls off so much. I don't think it's adding a huge amount. Right, last time I'm going to harp on detail planting. Again, if this is my view and this is where we've play tested from, you don't want this view for anyone, really. Because if you are doing the grasses obscuring the view, I suspect this probably looked pretty good before you planted it, but once you plant it, it's now blocking my view of the green completely. Additionally, what you are blocking it with is that dead grass, so same kind of thing. Like, let's have some colours or plants or something of visual interest to look at. Would be good. I'm hoping I can land it a little bit short and just kind of bounce it up. So we do use a little bit of that runoff, but what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is that if the sculpting's a bit more severe to run me down to here as like a collection point, I think it might work. It would still feel a little clunky. I like the concept of having mounds around the green, but this fairway needs to be usable as a layup zone, otherwise this is kind of pointless. And again, like, different angle maybe, but none of this fairway is really serving a purpose for it. Whilst the green looks like it's got a lot of fairway around it, to be honest, it's kind of a you hit the green or else. There's not really a run on. There's not really a run from this side. This mound is making this fairway unusable. This fairway is kind of a run off, but not really. Like, you may as well have had the fairway just going up here. So it's thinking about, rather than just putting fairway around the green, what's the purpose of it? How is that helping the player, particularly again for CC difficulty? This one frames nicely, very wide green. I'd have probably had this more at a diagonal. I think would have looked really good across this bunker, and also means a bit more of a question as to how much you put on the tee shot. Green slopes look good, a couple of helping slopes, particularly for this pin here, and I appreciate that little kicker. Again, questioning your fairway apron, like, what's the purpose of it other than visual? Because this isn't helping anyone. You may as well have had an island green, because if I miss it, yeah, I might be on short grass, but it's not helping me get the ball onto the green, which is really the purpose of an apron. It kind of is a runoff if I go a bit too far right, but it just feels a little janky. I like the planting, and the little interspersing of the autumn trees looks good. Particularly in this lighting, I think that works nicely. Struggling to read the winds. I'm not sure I did bother on that one, to be honest. Completely forgot. I like that we see this hole over. Ah, missed it. The hole on the left-hand side looking back from the green. That's really cool. Crafting. Let's just go back to the green. He says, failing completely to go back to the green. Where was it? Oh, there we are. Crafting these little views of different holes is great. Right, that really generates a bit of environment and feeling of cohesion between it all. So love that look. Like the more of that sort of stuff we can do, particularly as it's kind of like partly open but partly not. So you've got a bit of a feeling of like suspense as to where this hole's going. I like that usually. Much better detail planting around the tee. I'd still like to see some little bits of different colours around it, but it's much more visually pleasing. And this is a fun hole. Again, we're kind of coming to a common theme. These greens, again, this may as well be an island, although at least if we roll long, we're going onto fairway. But like none of that fairway is actually helping me. At least work the ball onto the green. It might help me if I miss, but that's only part of really what we want a fairway apron for. Really cool tee shot and green. Like I really like the second shot. Like, comfortably my favourite on the course so far. The green itself, yeah, probably CC appropriate. I'm not sure I love the pin placement here in that it's kind of just the other side of the spine. I might lower or flatten that a little bit, but it's not difficult. That's more a case of personal preference. That's it. Yeah. And the planting around here looks better, I would say, because it's a bit... The thing that struck me about this hole, particularly your planting around here, is it's much denser and therefore it looks better. So like here looks much better than here, and I think you need that density for the environment you're going for, because if you're going for the underbrush being the star of the show, it's got to not be sparse. If we're looking at that looks a little bit empty, as does that. We're lacking trees or underbrush anywhere, whereas when we look the other way it looks great. There's a putt. Yeah, so like that way looks much better. I'm going to guess by the way the bushes are and by the way the grasses are that you're using multi-plant a lot. I think getting away from that would probably help you a bit. Yeah, I like that. That's a nice little feature. I might have a few rocks a little further away from it as well, just showing like where the rest of it had fallen to, but that's really cool. Okay, so red heather. Bunker shapes really haven't done very much for me either. They're kind of there. This one's also, you can see the awkward pop in. That's nothing you can do anything about. It's just how the game renders sometimes. Longish par 3. We do have a... yeah, again, the fairway's not helping us because it's running off. Just trying to hit a little bit of a partial. But there is that kind of helper slope to funnel a decent shot a little bit closer, which I appreciate. Some of the green sloping here is a bit weird though. Like, I don't really get why the high point is here. If you're trying to funnel the ball that way, you probably want this part of the green to be lower rather than necessarily a high point and then everything dips into here. But just a thought. I don't think that works too badly. Ooh, wasn't expecting to hold that. Okay, love that we've got the view to the clubhouse over there. I'd have probably killed this tree, I think, just for getting you an even better view. And I suspect this view may not have been by design, more like a little happy accident. You just realised that you could see the clubhouse. Once you get that, just make the most of it. Yeah, same stuff with planting. Like you can see up here, you've got a lot of barren space. In addition to like the difference between these two recent tee shots, the previous one looked so good close up. This one's a little bit more barren. Okay, we've now gone to centerline bunkers, which you can see off the tee. It's just hard to note. Yeah, you can see them. This one is an island green. I know this. I'm assuming this is based on 7 at Old Sandwich, which is a really fun hole. I don't know if I've got a safe tee shot here at all. 448 to an island green. I mean, we're going to play devil's advocate here. I don't feel I can hit driver here because of how the fairway is cutting in. I don't feel I can hit driver here with the wind. Can't hit it here. Could probably hit it here, but it's quite a narrow shot. And I can't hit right of this bunker. I think with the centre line, you always want to make sure that people have got space one side more than the other. So I'd probably make these more of about half the size wide, or at least one of them, and probably put it a little bit further this side so that you can bail out this way if you want them to, or they can bail out this way but they leave a worse angle. Certainly once you start using two of them, I've got a history of this, it gets a little dicey because you're cutting off an awful amount of the fairway, and I can't play right of this one at all, so almost all of this fairway is useless. Useless is a harsh term, but like rather than being useful, like can I actually use this? Not really. No one's playing down here. If they were, that would be the hardest tee shot on the course so far. So we're going to hit 3-wood. And then I think we'll see how the length of this hole probably comes into play, because that's my safe tee shot on this one. All right, 2-4-8. So now I have a 3-iron, because I can't, it's not going to be 5, into this pin on an island green. And I think we've asked for a bit too much. If you're going for an island green, it's got to be a short hole or a par 5. Either works pretty well. If you're going for it on a mid to long par 4, you're asking for a lot from the player who you've basically got to give up the tee shot, and you really haven't with going for 2 centerline bunkers. Now the green sloping actually on the island green you've gone for, I think works really quite nicely. And actually this is probably like as a green on its own, I think this is my favourite one, but when you couple it with the tee shot, there's loads of good here. I would say that you don't want to do a runoff into rough, try generally to avoid that. Yeah, there's lots of this I like. It's just thinking about those two elements together, like does your tee shot does your tee shot and approach shot really fit? And yes, people can make birdies, but I think you're putting a bit too much pressure on the tee shot with that one. Okay. Tight dog leg. We can't ever carry this waist. I might have liked to have seen this tee bumped up a little bit further so that carrying this is a possibility. Because I think this sets up from the tee, like people will think, oh yeah, I can carry that, and it's about how much of the corner I can cut off. But when you zoom in, you can't carry any of it, even downwind with a long driver. And then there's that real choke point. I just don't think this bunker cutting in this way and the fairway going this way, it basically just forces me to lay up somewhere out here, which is a much less interesting tee shot than it could have been if this bunker was like a diagonal carry hazard and I'm biting off as much as I can choose to get in a better angle to this green, rather than just like I'm just going to hit bumper partial down there without really thinking, because there's some interesting ground movement there, but like that tee shot could have been so much more. Love the dense planting down this side again. I think this green's good. And a gentle run on. I suspect partly, I'm going to guess this is because we all go through this, graduating from the Canuck greens, where his default is to bump every green by about 2 feet, which can work wonders for sidelines, but you really want to allow people to have a chance to run a ball on from a long way away. Putting greens flat to the ground would make a real difference. Sometimes you want bowls and like different things. So like, we'll see this one go in, and this one, it just about carries all the way. Pretty good shot. But I think you'll get so much more variety in your greens, and one of the biggest things I'd get you to do with future courses is go, right, okay, this one was a raised green with runoff everywhere. The next one's going to be dead flat to the ground, and you can run the ball on, and the following one's going to be in a bowl, and the next one's going to have a bunker short left, and the next one's going to have bunkers right, or something like that. Just variety, I think, will be a big thing for you. I've got an eagle putt anyway. I think I've missed it, but ooh, really gone long. Okay, just a bad putt. 2 bad putts. Oh well. Otherwise, again, I think your fairway's kind of functioning as runoff, which we go back to the CC nature of the course. Like, you could have that play more forgivingly than it does. Again, nice view of the clubhouse. I like how this one presents off the tee. We do have another one of those tee shots where it's just bunkers either side. It's therefore a little less strategic than it could be. So I'm going to play out closer to this one. I'm not saying you can't have hazards either side. You definitely can, but you probably want to stagger them a little bit when you do. Yeah, pitching wedge is probably good. And for this sort of green, I like the green complex a lot. I would definitely be having fairway around here because it's flat enough to allow it and would kind of make sense. Yeah, I think reading up on strategic golf design would be a big thing for you as well, because there's a lot of this course that just comes across as very penal. Like, penal golf design is basically if you miss the fairway, you have a bad shot. Whereas, and here's the shot, hit it. Whereas strategic golf design is, well, here's your options as to how you play this hole. Which one do you choose? And they've each got various merits, and there's different ways to get the ball to the pin. I think here there's a clear one way to do it, but it would be cool to see a bit more variety. Okay, suddenly got a big, long central bunker, which we haven't had before, and I don't really feel fits. Like, you've done the waist bunkers. Like, if you're going to do this sort of thing, I'd tie it in with a waist bunker. The sculpting here is also a little awkward, because to prop this bunker up for the sideline, you've had to dip it down here, which looks a bit... It's a little heavy-handed, the sculpting here, compared to everywhere else is very flat. Yeah, if you look at your green site again, same sort of thing. And I guess here gives me a better angle, but like with the very first hole, to get to this pin, there's no angle whatsoever, so it doesn't really matter where I hit it. And you can have the odd pin like that, but I'd still always prefer one better way to play it. I'm just going to bump it somewhere down here, because that way we get a bit more green to work with, I guess. Not quite. I think the greens themselves have been pretty good, actually. I was just thinking this one has a little tear on it, but we haven't seen a preponderance of tears. Like, it's been nice and mixed, actually. There's been one with spines, little, yeah, a variety of different green types, I would say. So this one's bowling in a little bit more, which is nice. Although I think this bunker hurts us a little more than it helps. I like the concept of this hole, but again, with a long par 3, you've got to allow us loads of options to run it in, and that bunker, and not so much the bunker position is fine, but the mounding behind it's going to shoot the ball on so much, and it kind of feeds into the green here. I think you're asking, again, a really perfect shot rather than... Ground game for me should provide us with forgiveness as to how we get the ball to the hole. And like, I feel like it's a little tight as to how I get it there. But I love that you're trying to allow that. Like, let's have more of this. This is a much better green connected with fairway than any of them on the course. It's still not quite there, but it's so much better. And that's the best par 3 on the course so far. I do like the little mound. Again, just going back to that hole, actually. So I think a lot of what you're doing is also, like, when you are placing bunkers, they're cutting off kind of the whole green rather than just part of it. I feel like this hole would have been improved massively if there's fairway, say, round all the way here, and that little bunker is smaller and just jutting into this hillside. Maybe you could bring in your waist bunker here. But like, if you want to really go at this, then maybe you like go close to that bunker, but you could also land it next to the bunker and roll it on. Like, that works really well. But the way you've done it as a carry hazard, we've got to carry it anyway, and bounce on somewhere. Whereas if you'd had it over here and you're playing close to it to run it onto the front, that would be better. Additionally, just with the long par 3, you're probably going to want to do it more often than not. Like distance control is the thing, so you probably want to be more forgiving with that. So this green, you probably want to be rotating it more so that people can hit it kind of online, but like the distance hitting 230 yards exactly is going to be the hard part of this hole. So if you orient it so it's basically long to short, there's more forgiveness for people getting the ball on the green as well. A little bit of a reverse camber hole now, which is nice. That's a little change up. You can see the first bunker, but not the second, which is fine. And play close to them. I like that you've given us a little bit more width. I think with the reverse camber hole, you probably want to give even more width. It's very difficult. Yeah, same thing with your bunker cutting in the front of the fairway. Like, you've given us a way to access this green via the ground, which is great. We've been needing that. However, that bunker cuts off any other path. Like, you can accomplish the same thing, but if you're going to do that, you've got to give more fairway this way, and that would then help with the mounding, because again, if I don't hit the perfect shot and I'm on a pretty severely cambered lie, which makes me think, and I've got the wind, like, you're asking an awful lot from this shot. And you can see I'm just off. We're not going to end up with a bunker shot. We get away with the light rough, which is nice. Oh, great. Couple of really poor putts on the par 5s. And I think this hole worked pretty well for this pin. I can see how I can feed it here or here. For these ones, you've given us no fairway and everything's running on, so it is still just hit the green or else. Even though it's functioning as a bowl, it's not really got the playing characteristics around the green. You need the fairway to help it on. So little things like your fairway surfacing around the green, I think, is a really big takeaway for me. Okay, 13 was our short par 4. It's a short par 4. Kind of crowned pin in that it runs off this side and this side, which on this length of hole I don't mind so much. So with holes like this, you're always looking for why do you not hit driver first. I think there's enough defense here. Yes, I could land it in here and potentially run it up here, but it feels more likely that I'd have a putt from long. As a rule, I don't love drivable par 3s that are sub 320. Like the hitting a partial driver thing, I feel it's been a bit overdone recently. But then again, counterpoint, I guess, we are also talking CC where some people might have 275. So actually disregard that. I think that makes sense. But I still do think it's been overdone, but it makes sense in this context. So we can lay up down here, but we would be semi-blind over there to an awkward pitch. We can lay up back here. Yeah, this one works well. Could go as far as say this is the best hole on the course so far. I think it probably is. We've got options, which we like. I want to be playing, I think, for a wedge in. Actually, I'm just going to play bunt 5-iron down the left-hand side, because that way I get a decent angle, view of the pin, and we get a wedge shot. I am very much questioning your 32 feet of elevation change, given that I've got 20 feet up to this pin, and we're on a high point of the plot. I'm not sure you've understood this. Because that clubhouse is significantly below us, even down to, yeah. But that's fine. It was an honourable mention rather than an actual using. Because it was 32 feet across the whole course, not just across one hole. Which I suspect might be how you've misinterpreted. Okay, this one. Short par 3, love the green site. And the front mound doesn't look all that aesthetically pleasing. I think we could dig the bunker in a little bit more or plant this or something. The backdrop to the hole looks absolutely gorgeous. Really like that. Same things with planting, like let's have a little bit more detail and colours here rather than all the colour being long. But it does look good. As for the green itself, I don't mind a short par 3 going front to back, but if we look at the green site itself, you've got this giant hill behind, so the land is flowing all this way and the green is kind of fighting that. So it doesn't make as much sense. Like if I'm standing here looking at it, you're thinking it's at least flat. I don't think it's a big issue, but again, longer term with your designing, you're going to want to try to tie your green sites in a little bit more with surrounding landforms and make them make sense that way. But it does provide a nice little bit of challenge, and it's the first front to back green you've gone for, which is good. It's not something you've overdone. A solid hole. Those two that you've chosen as required elements, I think, are really good choices. Okay, back to the centerline bunker. So we can go this way for... This hole feels very different in that that front bunker in front of the greens kind of... Well, I think part of this is more what I've wanted you to do with the green sites anyway. But the scaling of this bunker is a little off. It's huge compared to the function it should have. Like if you're going for a ground game approach and you've got a small bunker in front of it, you want that to be small rather than taking up all of this space I could use for like that running shot. And I guess it's designed to try to push me this way, but I can't get around it from this way. I've got no shot of getting around it this way either, so it's just a really penal hazard again. With this wind, actually, I want to be coming in from this side, don't I? Again, like the central bunker on a long par 4 is fine as long as you give us enough space. I think you probably did this time. 188. We need one more club, don't we? But this is a decent change-up hole, and routing-wise makes a lot of sense after the two short holes we've just had. Test something different. Would have liked for it to be a little bit more ground game focused, but I can see how you've got the contouring to the right of the green that will run a ball on, and a bit of a backstop long. I think the idea is there, the execution's a little off, particularly with that front bunker. Okay, par 3 playing back the other way. Daviden-ish in that it's got that hard back front slope. The triangular green shape, I think, always makes me think of that. And the distance would make sense. Try and land it. Oh no, I pulled it. Bunker sculpting's been pretty solid throughout. Oh, that came out way hotter than I thought it was going to. I'm just gonna hit back and forth on the screen for a little while. A ridiculous bogey. Not my favourite par 3, but not the least favourite. Okay, we now go across a road. This one's interesting. Okay. Tee shot wise, we've got some land movement, which is good and I think this one presents really nicely with how it's doglegging slightly around those trees. Okay, so again, I'm kind of questioning what these bunkers are for. obviously I'm blind because I've hit the wrong side of the hogsback, which I'm completely fine with. I think it's a shame because this is a good view. I don't really get what the point of the bunkers is, if I'm honest. Yeah. Ooh, that's leapt that way. Okay, we're on a mound. Making this hole very interesting. And we've played completely the wrong side, so we're going. So I guess we're trying to facilitate a running approach because the green all runs down this way as well. And are those bunkers meant to kind of guide you into playing up here? If that is the case, again, you're going to need more fairway high left, high right, sorry, in order for people to land the ball short, feed it on, and you're going to want your green a bit more angled rather than being side on. If not, it's kind of like a hit to here or lay back, and it's a pitch shot to a shallow green, I guess. I don't love these slopes that are flowing towards the back of the green either. Those feel again a bit penal. I'm just like, if you're not hitting the perfect shot, you're not getting close. Same thing here. I've just noticed beyond this pin it runs away as well, which I don't love. Like if you're putting a slope running away directly after a pin, it's just a very artificial defense. So just like if you hit it a little bit too long, you're going way further. It's like we can. It's not much fun as defense to watch a putt go slightly fast and then keep running. Particularly, again, we're going CC where we want to be building in forgiveness where possible. Like a green that runs away is usually one of the least forgiving aspects of a golf course. Okay, and we're finishing up. Would have loved to see some of the heather on the tee shot just to bring us back. I see that we're getting it on the approach. Probably hitting into the waste bunker there. Oh no, we've just carried it. And then we got a little bit of a bowl, slightly smaller green to finish, but I like the green site, a little bit of a raised kind of amphitheatre. Probably want, as a finishing green, I think you want it a bit bigger, just adds more variety, and particularly when you're hitting a wedge in, although it's probably due to the wind and just getting lucky with that skating the bunker. Need to sit. Again, you can see I'm just long and we're hacking at heavy rough. Like, I think we could make that a little bit friendlier. Deserved about what it got. Okay. There we are. That's old Barren Burn. What a boring scorecard on the back nine. Didn't feel like that. I promise. So there's lots to like there, and I think so yours is a name that I didn't recognise as a designer. I recognise you from forum posts, but not from courses per se. And I think that kind of shows in a lot of the decisions that we've got there. There's stuff you're still figuring out. I think hazarding, like where you're placing bunkers, is huge. Like look up strategic golf design, read articles on Fried Egg, listen to their podcasts are great, or go to Golf Club Atlas, or look at templates are great for teaching you how to use different landforms and hazards differently. So it's not just a don't hit it here, which is how bunkers can be perceived, but here's a hazard to try to negotiate or play close to, and if you don't, then you're getting an infinitely tougher second shot. Those sorts of things will be really helpful for you, I think. Planting we went over, I think just needs more. I hesitate to say time because I know how time consuming my first few courses, which I thought were awfully planted, were. So I don't think it's a time question, but I think it will be as you progress and get quicker with it. But it's also where you're putting that time and thinking about looking at the course from all sorts of angles. Like where do you want your detailed planting to be? Like really framing that look off the tee, highlights and things like that. Because there were parts that were really nicely planted. I'm thinking of that island green with the spine running through it, where I talked about density of planting. That was really nice. The short par 3 behind that looked really good, but in front, I guess that's the example I would lean to. That 14th hole behind it looked great. In front of it looked very patchy and kind of underfinished as a result. And you might have been fighting meter with sinking all of those red ash trees. I know they eat up a lot, and that's where I probably would have looked at the coleus plants as well. I think they could have added something for you. Additionally, I think just the raised greens really hurt, and just the greens and the green surrounds. Like for CC, that's for me the biggest part that you have to nail for difficulty. You have to make sure that the greens are fair, which I think your greens were. What wasn't was where you're placing hazards in front, cutting off any sort of ground approach, particularly in the winds. Played high winds as suggested, but if that's the case, you've got to make sure that there are ways to access the greens with a running shot. If, say, someone, because I didn't hit many hazards off the tee, if I had done, I'm hacking out of heavy rough into some of those greens, they're just going to be inaccessible. Fairway around them as well. Hopefully, I've kind of exemplified why that's an important feature and why you want to have that, because it will just make the course so much more varied and give you so many more opportunities for fun shots. So I think those are my main takeaways. I enjoyed my round. I think there's a lot that I would hope that you pick up from this contest, and hopefully it's one of those things like I remember my first contest gave me loads of useful feedback to take into future course designs, and meant that there were loads of mistakes that I just hadn't realised I was making. Hopefully this does some of that for you. But yeah, thank you for watching. See you again soon.